Hello everybody. I'm out for a hike in the park and a picnic lunch. I'm not sure if you can see that or not. But what follows is a video on cooking my lunch outdoors here in the park, and I'll also give you some looks at some of the clips of the walk that I'm going to take afterward. It's been a foggy morning here, but it's cleared now and it's a gorgeous day, so I'm off to enjoy the park while it can still be enjoyed this time of year. Well, I'm out in the parkland to take a bit of a hike, and then before I do that, I thought I would have my lunch set up over there at that picnic table. I'm going to try to use the little gas stove that I haven't really used very much. I used it once before out here in the park, and that was last winter. Very cold, a lot of snow, but it worked very well at that time. I guess since then I've only had it going once, so hopefully there's enough gas in the thing to cook my lunch, and then I'm going to take a hike. I'll do some footage as I do the hike as well, just give you a little look at the seashore and whatever here before we get started. Important to use the park and enjoy it at this time, because it won't be long now and the deer hunting season will start, and it just is not safe to come out here and hike during the hunting season. I don't want to exaggerate. I've never known anybody to be shot or wounded, but I was out here a few years ago with the walking group, the Pathfinders walking group that I hike with most Sundays, and all of a sudden there was live rifle fire all around us. We got out of there quickly and nobody was hurt, but it makes me nervous enough that I won't hike out here when the hunting season is on. Picked a few small tomatoes before I left home. I'm wearing you in case you don't understand what's happening with the camera here. First time I've had the harness rig that you put the GoPro on. I haven't had it on in a long time. I used to put it on when I went hiking, but haven't done that in a bit. This is a shield, protects it from the wind. There isn't much wind today, but I always notice if I don't use the thing, a few times that I have used it, I have to get that out and put it up because all of a sudden the wind picks up here. I've never used it to fry before or to make toast, and the plans today are to have eggs on toast for lunch, if it works. I no longer remember the exact amount that I paid for this, but it was like $10 or less, including shipping, and it came in from China, I believe. It amazes me that they could sell something that works as well as this works for such a small amount of money. Always a bit of gas escapes when I'm threading it on here, and it's under pressure. It's very cold. Keep your fingers away from it, I guess is the idea. Now what have I done? Still leaking gas. Well, okay, this thing here. Talking to myself here. I don't know what I'm doing, this problem. It was leaking gas, but I think it's because I had the gas turned on a bit. Hopefully I haven't leaked all of the gas out of it. There, those little supports. The toaster is quite... The camp toaster that I use it out in the cabin as well. It's fairly large, so I'll have to... Well, not showing you what I'm doing, am I? Not sure if this will produce heat enough to toast bread or not. If not, I will, instead of having eggs on toast, I'll just have eggs on bread, I guess. Bring you back in a second here. Well, I did the toast, well, just a light toasting, I guess, because I don't have any idea how much gas I've got left, and I don't want to have to eat raw eggs. I've got the frying pan on there, a little no-stick frying pan. Some tomatoes that I picked out of the hoop roast just before I left. And those are vegetarian sausage patties. There isn't much support for the little frying pan, so it's something you've got to be quite careful with, I guess, or you'll have a hot frying pan in your lap. Those little things that go out to support a pan don't go out quite far enough, even though this is a small frying pan. Well, I'll bring you back when I hopefully have some eggs sizzling. I always forget to bring something when I'm doing a picnic, and I didn't bring any salt and pepper, so I'm going to have fresh eggs, no salt and pepper. So far so good. I haven't dumped the frying pan in my lap here. A couple of fresh free-range eggs that the girls just laid last evening. Managed to get the heat regulated quite nicely. I turned it down really low, and it seems to work quite well with this small frying pan. Still kind of teetery, could fall over, but have to be extra cautious in that area, I guess. I like my eggs over easy rather than sunny side up, so I'm sure I'll break both yolks trying to do that. But I'll bring you back, or I guess probably I'll use that clip at the beginning of this video when the meal is complete. Well, I was only 50% right. I broke one yolk. Now I have some water on boiling to have a cup of tea afterwards, so the little canister of gas is still holding out. I've got to remember the next time I'm in a store that has camping supplies to buy another couple of canisters. That's the original canister that I bought along with the stove, and I'm still using it a year later, or close to a year later. So I'll have my lunch, and then I'll take you with me on the walk. Lunch was very enjoyable, even without salt and pepper. It's amazing how much better food tastes when you cook it and eat it outside in the fresh air for some reason. Anyway, that was very good, something I should do more frequently, I guess. I'm just starting to do my hike here. I'll turn the camera on periodically and show you a few things. I'm going to stick to the little gravel roads called the carriage trails. There are a number of woodland hiking trails which are lovely. A little more strenuous, of course, than the roadway, but today I'm going to stick strictly to the roadway. I'm going to stop at two places along the way. One is Liberty Point, and the other is called the Lower Duck Pond. This sign here, if you can read it, is giving the kilometers to Liberty Point, 3.2 kilometers. But I think that's by taking the hiking trail along the shoreline, which starts right here. It's a lot closer if you walk on the gravel roads, because the shoreline trail obviously follows the curvature of the shore in around all the little bays and whatever. So it's a longer hike. I don't know, 3.2. I'm probably on the carriage trail here. It's probably about 2 kilometers. I love walking on these little trails. Even in the summertime, they're shady enough so that it's quite cool in here, even on a hot day. We still have the tail end of our tourist season here. This park that I'm walking in is the Roosevelt Campobello International Park. I shouldn't probably quote acreages, because maybe I'm not thinking clearly on the topic, but I think they have around 3,500 acres, 3,000 to 3,500 anyway, in the Roosevelt Park. And the Roosevelt Park borders on the provincial park at Herring Cove Provincial. And there's another 1,500 acres or so there. So you put the two parks together and you've got almost 5,000 acres anyway of parkland. This coming weekend, we're into early October as I say, but this coming weekend is the Canadian Thanksgiving weekend. Thanksgiving Day being Monday the 12th of October. And that traditionally is the last day for the Roosevelt Park. You can always hike the trails and whatever, but the main attraction in the park is the Franklin Roosevelt's summer cottage. Some cottage, 32 rooms, 16 bedrooms and 9 bathrooms, if I remember correctly. I used to work there. I guess it was my last years in high school. I used to work there in the summertime. That was a while ago. Anyway, I'm going to stop at the two locations, the Lower Duck Pond and the Liberty Point, both of which are very interesting to see. So I will turn the camera back on and show you those when I get. It hasn't taken too long to get to this point. This is where the road divides in Lower Duck and Liberty Point. And I'm going to get down to the Lower Duck Pond first. It's still a bit of a hike down in there, so I won't keep the camera running all the way, but I'll bring you back just before we get to the area. And starting down into the area called the Lower Duck Pond. I'll explain in a minute or so here how it gets that name, I guess. See several boats offshore there. They're relatively small boats, so I don't know how well they'll show on the camera here, but October 1st the sea urchin season opens. So they've been dragging for sea urchins for the last few days. Not something that's eaten at all here locally. Most of it is air-shipped to Japan. At least what's caught here is air-shipped to Japan. This time of year you often see Japanese buyers in testing and tasting, I guess. This particular area is handicapped accessible, which is a good thing. The park, after all, is in memory of President Roosevelt, who was handicapped from polio. Off to the right, which probably isn't showing on this, if you walk along the beach there, off to the right you can see a small pond, fresh water, and that's why this is called the Lower Duck Pond. There are two of these ponds, this one and one that's around that other headland, and which is called the Upper Duck Pond. How clever, huh? It's a beautiful spot to come for a walk on the beach, but I'm not doing a beach walk today, I guess. A couple of tourists have their dogs with them. Something interesting grows along here. I presume the birds have eaten them all now, but all along the top of this, well, we call it a bar, a gravel bank here, wild gooseberries. I have come out and picked them before and made preserves out of them. They're very nice. Well, I'll continue my walk and head out to Liberty Point. I'm back on the trail on the way out to Liberty Point, and you pass by an area called Yellow Bank. It always interests me how these places get their names. This has been called Yellow Bank all of my lifetime, and probably for a long time before my lifetime. The soil is not yellow. There's nothing yellow about the beach. Perhaps when it was named, it was a field full of yellow wildflowers or something. I don't know. I've often speculated on it anyway. But it's another view of that same beach that we just left. See the waves coming in. Just a guess, but I think perhaps the tide is coming up. I didn't check before I left. And what we're looking at across the way is Lubac, Maine, the most eastern town in the U.S., and the very point of land, which you probably can't make out, there's a lighthouse at the very end of that point of land called West Quoddy Light because it's in the western end of Quoddy Bay. But that lighthouse occupies the most eastern point of land in the U.S. Well, we'll continue the walk out to Liberty Point. I had to turn the camera back on because a seal just made its sort of mournful call, and there's no way you'll be able to see them. I will try to edit this and zoom it in as much as possible, but several of those rocks just offshore each have a seal. There, if you pick that up or not, the sound, I'll turn the volume up to see if you can hear it, but that is one of the seals talking to another seal, I guess. We have lots of them around this time of year. Whatever it is they're feeding on, the water must be full of them. And they'll be here for another month and a half, 2 months yet, and then they disappear for the winter. I don't know how far south they go, but they get out of here before winter settles in anyway. Coming down into the Liberty Point parking area, the land that you can see offshore is Grand Manan Island, and that's about 10 miles across the water to Grand Manan. You see this rock sticking up down here, this large rock with grass on top? The park calls it the Sugarloaf Rock. Obviously they have never spoken to the children around here. You can see what I'm referring to or not, but the children call it the Frog Rock. You can see one eye, an eyebrow above it, and off the far left is the mouth or whatever of the frog, if you use your imagination. Another good look at all of the sea urchin boats offshore. 4 of them. I would say where they're fishing, they're probably Canadian boats. Both Canadian and American boats fish the urchins, but those 4, my guess, would all be inside of Canadian waters. So they're probably all Canadian boats. There are 2 observation decks. There's a better look at the Frog Rock. I'll walk you to the first one, and then I'll probably go to the second one and show you the view from there as well. Probably getting some wind noise. You get close to the water, there's always a breeze. Quite a breeze, actually, so you're probably getting quite a bit of wind noise. A couple more urchin boats, one in quite close to shore, and one further off. Beautiful view even with the wind noise. See the surf down below. Going down into the second observation deck, which isn't as large as the other one. If you don't care for heights, neither one of them are in a very good spot, and I don't care for heights, but closed in like this I feel relatively safe. A different view. That rock offshore there, at high tide, that's completely covered by water, and it's a dangerous ledge for boats, but it's marked on navigational charts and whatever. But I can see, and I'm sure they won't show up in this video, but there is a number of seals on that. They crawl out on that and sun themselves every day when the tide's down. And that again is West Quaddy across the way. You can't see the lighthouse, I'm sure, now, because it's not even standing out by itself. It's got a background of trees behind it, kind of makes it a bit obscure. Well, I got to try to save a little battery power here. I thought I would close this off with a look at the Roosevelt cottage, just the exterior of it. I know I've shown it in a couple of videos that I did on the island, but those are videos that are way back in my list there somewhere, so perhaps the new subscribers don't know about it or haven't seen it. So I'll close off by giving you a look at the Roosevelt cottage. Well, as promised, that's the Roosevelt cottage. President Roosevelt's Canadian summer home. If you want to sort of envision it, what it was like when the Roosevelts owned it, you've got to get rid of the red paint. It was not red. When President Roosevelt died toward the end of the Second World War, his eldest son, Elliot, somehow became the owner. I'm not certain if Elliot inherited or if he bought out his mother and siblings or what, but Elliot owned it. Eleanor Roosevelt didn't die until the mid-60s. He sold it to Almond Hammer, Hammer Art Galleries and Arm & Hammer baking soda fame. And Mr. Hammer, Victor Hammer, he had it painted red, and it has been left that color ever since. It was a gift, a wedding gift to Eleanor and Franklin, from, the story always says, from his mother. I'm not certain what that means, if his father might have died at a young age or what, but a lot of the local Campobello stories about Roosevelt refer to his mother and not his father, so something I've always meant to look into but never did. But anyway, as promised, that's a look at the Roosevelt cottage, and I'd like to thank you very much for watching the video.